langa dohamba dingufuna kuyo yonke indawo dohamba dingufuna That was my grandmother uNomathamsanqa singing her song in sorrow, opening up a case that has not been opened in 3 months' time. She was taking out each and every piece of a top, of a dress, of a skirt that belonged to my aunt uNomathamsanqa. She folded them once more and looking at her picture for the first time since she disappeared 3 months ago. She was in tears as she sang that song, and I was listening in a deep sleep. But one thing that woke me up was an argument between her and my mother. Mama, don't you dare take my daughter with you when you leave. Don't take Nono anywhere. I mean, she's only 5 years old, Mama. I don't want her to be exposed to these things of the ancestors. No, Caesar. I'll understand him, Danawam. I'll respond. This might be beneficiary for her one day, said my grandmother to my mother. But my mother could not understand. They kept on arguing and arguing and arguing. And the next thing, I felt my grandmother shaking me from a deep sleep. No, vuka. Masambe mtanam. You have to take a bath now. Kodwa makhulu. Just like any other 5-year-old, I did not want to wake up. It was very early in the morning. But you know what? I woke up because I did not have a choice. She had with her a big basin filled with water, warm water, with my towel inside and a soap. She started bathing me, and when I looked on top of the table, wow, there was that Xhosa tradition of mine that I liked the most, umbhaco. You see, when I looked at umbhaco, it did something to me, and those beads did something to me. But what is it that they did? I did not have an idea at all. I was excited to see them, and I couldn't wait to put them on my body. She bathed me, dressed me up, and off we went. It was still a bit dark. Of Enqamakwe, climbing up and down, all the way to Ehlobo. And as we're walking, me and umakhulu, Ditiniwe, Makhulu, I am very tired. Masambe, mtanam, she said. We continued walking. And as we get closer, I started hearing some drums that were beating. Boom, 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 boom. Makhulu, I said. Dioyika, Makhulu. Hush now, baby. Tula, masambe mtanam. Off we walked. As we got closer and closer, the drums were beating stronger and stronger and stronger, and I was more scared because now I was also hearing the song that was being sang in the background. Jolinkomo, oh yeah, yo ha, oh yeah, oh ha, ndinenga, magazomsi wam, Jolinkomo, oh yeah, yo ha, oh yeah, oh ha, ndinenga, magazomsi wam. Hey, uMakhulu was getting more excited. We came closer and closer. And when we got into the yard, I realized that there was a lot of izangoma that were in a circle. And in the middle, there was uMandlovu, the well-known sangoma in that village. She was leading all of them as they were singing, and they had entered into a trance. And the next thing, I saw uMandlovu busy shaking, and she fell into a trance unconsciously. I was scared once more. I grabbed my Makhulu's dress. Makhulu, Dioiga. Hush now, baby. Tula. I kept quiet, holding on to my grandmother's dress. I did not know what to say or do, but I was scared yet excited a bit. They sang for long and long and long time in a trance, dancing and dancing and dancing, hitting their feet hard on the floor. And I realized that these people were in another world, not in the world that we're in. uMakhulu was assisting as she clapped her hands as they were singing their song. Jolinkomo, Jolinkomo, uyayeyo ha, uyayeyo ha, tinengxaka ngxaka zonziwam. Jolinkomo, Jolinkomo, uyayeyo ha, uyayeyo ha, tinengxaka ngxaka zonziwam. The next thing, uMandlovu stood up from the center. She stood up. Without a word, she pointed her finger into the kraal. And she pointed at a cow that was so fat and so fed, well fed. Inkomo yamanguni. Inkomo yokwehlisa. It was so big and fat with brown and white colors in it. And she said, yiyo ke le asele kuyo uNomathamsanqa ngaphambi kokuba alahleke. This is the cow that uNomathamsanqa drank from before she disappeared. Without a word, she led the cow with a finger as it walked out of the kraal, and it went straight out of the kraal into the position where she led it with her hand. She directed it in front of everybody else. The cow walked as we followed with uMandlovu, the rest of the family, and izangoma zonke. I was only excited by seeing my cousins, all my other uncles and grandmothers. They were all over the place. We followed the cow singing the song Jolinkomo. We sang and sang and sang all the way to the river. When we got closer to the reef, uMandlovu lifted up a hand. Tolani! We all kept quiet. Not even one of you should cry. Otherwise, asoze niphinde nimbone uNomathamsanqa. Nindivile? Not anyone said a word. We all nodded our heads and we stood in front of the river. uMandlovu took his snuff and put it on top of a grass mat. She spoke something and then she spit on the floor, and then she put the grass mat on top of the water of the river. It started floating and floating and floating. When it got to the middle of the river, it twisted and turned and twisted and turned, twisted and turned until it disappeared in the middle of the river. The next thing, she took umqombothi and put it on the grass mat again and put it on top of the water in the river, and it started floating and floating and floating and floating. It twisted and turned and twisted and turned and twisted and turned until it disappeared in the middle of the river. At this time, I thought to myself, I might be seeing a movie or something. My eyes were wide open like this. I was a bit excited. I grabbed my grandmother's dress and said, Grandma, am I gonna go in next? I was so excited because I kept on wondering what was happening inside the river. Hush now, baby, said my grandmother. I just kept quiet. I was excited. At the same time, I was looking at the faces of the people that were around me, realizing that they were not excited. In fact, they looked like they were worried. And some of them felt like crying because I could see those tiny small tears in their eyes, but they held them back and they were so stronger. So I had mixed emotions. I didn't know whether should I be excited or should I be sad. But I realized this was a serious moment. The last thing was the cow. uMandlovu again led it with a finger pointed at it as it walked on top of the river so majestically. It walked so majestically, so slowly, and walked and walked and walked. When it got in the middle of the river, it started twisting and turning and twisting and turning and twisting and turning until it disappeared into the river. The deep, deep river. Then now I realize that something is really happening. This time I grabbed my grandmother's dress. Makulu, Makulu, are the people under the water? Are the cows there? Are the chickens? Oh, Makulu, there must be other kids. Should I go too? Hush now, baby, said my grandmother. I kept quiet. And this time, uMandlovu started the song. This time it was sang not so loud, but it was sang with passion, and you could see that people really meant when they sang the song. Jalengomo, Jalengomo, oh yeah, yo ha, oh yeah, oh ha, dinengaga ngaga somzi wam, Jalengomo, Jalengomo, oh yeah, yo ha, oh yeah, oh ha. Jalengomo, Jalengomo, oh yeah, oh ha, oh yeah, oh ha, dinengaga zomsiwam. The sun came up. It came out so brightly as it began to coming out. We started hearing a loud sound. It was the water twisting in the middle, but this time it was twisting anti-clockwise as if something was coming out. We all stood and kept quiet and looked into the river. Before any time, while we were still thinking what was going to happen, there came out something that I have never seen in my entire life. It was my aunt, uNomathamsanqa. The reason I said it was something that I had never seen in my entire life, she looked so beautiful as if she was kissed by the sun. She was wearing the finest Xhosa white beads that I've ever seen, including the light blue ones. She was so dry as if she was not coming out of the water. On her face, their eyes looked so bright and beautiful, but she had no smile on her face. And then the water twisted anti-wise and turned and twisted and turned and twisted and turned as my aunt was appearing. She was wearing the most beautiful umbhaco that I've ever seen. It was so dry, as if it was coming out of a dry cleaner. She walked out so majestically, having a white duke on her hand. She kept on hitting herself on the shoulders without saying a word. The next thing, I had everybody started ululating. We walked behind my aunt as she came out of the water and followed her into our home. And as she got there, there was a specific hut that was reserved just for her. She walked inside and nobody else was allowed to go in except for the elders and Izangoma kunye noMandlovu. Not even the uncles and the aunts were allowed to go in. She went in and sat down. Just because I was with the elder, uMakhulu, I went and sat next to Makhulu with those eyes saying, "Don't you dare chase me out," but nobody said a word. I sat there. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to go and hug her. I was looking around waiting to see if anybody else was watching. When I realized that they were not, without wasting any time, I ran quickly to my aunt and grabbed her with my two hands. I was so excited. They could not even stop me. She took out her duke and she hit me 3 times on my shoulders. I did not understand what she meant. Then she pat me with her hand on my back, and off I went back to my grandmother. For many, many years and many, many decades, people flocked into her heart. People from a village, people from villages all over in the Eastern Cape flocked into her heart for healing purposes and for purposes of even things like counseling. They went there with sicknesses. They came back healed. They went there with problems. They came there back with them solved. She became the well-known isangoma igqirha ngesiXhosa. Wayeliqirha lamanzi. She was well respected. My aunt never continued wearing her beads. She would wear her normal clothes, but every time she carried a duke over her shoulders. And when we had family gatherings, if there was someone with a spirit that was not good, she would enter in the room without a word and hit them with that duke, changing her face. And if you knew that we are Tagata or you were a witch, you would not stay in a room where she is. You would really leave the room. I grew up watching her, doing what she did best. I did not know why my grandmother took me there. But today, her words are echoing in my ears when she said to my mother, this might be beneficiary for her one day. Because now I can hear, I can see. I've been given the healing powers. But you see, I did not have to go and disappear for 3 months. I did not have to drink from any flower. I did not have to come out of the water. She was called by Abadala. Kodwa mna Ndibizwe Ngabadala. Diabulela.